The white satin dress felt like chains around Amara Johnson's body as she stood at the altar of St. Mary's Cathedral. 200 guests filled the pews behind her, their whispers creating a buzz that made her skin crawl. The massive church, with its towering windows and golden crosses, had seemed like a dream venue just hours ago. Now it felt like a courtroom where she was about to be sentenced. Trevor Hamilton stood across from her in his black tuxedo, his brown eyes cold and distant. The man she had loved for 3 years, the man she had given her heart to, looked at her like she was a stranger. The pastor held his Bible open, waiting for Trevor to say the words that would bind them forever. "Do you, Trevor Hamilton, take Amara Johnson to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Pastor Williams asked, his voice echoing through the cathedral. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Amara's heart hammered against her chest. She could feel the eyes of every guest burning into her back. Her mother sat in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Her father's face was tense with worry. Trevor looked directly at Amara, and what she saw in his eyes made her blood turn cold. There was no love there. No warmth. No promise of a future together. "No," Trevor said clearly, his voice carrying to every corner of the church. "I don't." The gasp that rose from the congregation sounded like a wave crashing against rocks. Amara felt her legs wobble, but she forced herself to stay standing. This could not be happening. Not here. Not now. Not like this. "Trevor, what are you saying?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. He stepped closer to the microphone so everyone could hear him clearly. "I'm saying I can't marry you, Amara. I thought I could, but I can't. You're just not enough. Not for me. Not for my family. Not for the life I want to build." The words hit her like physical blows. Each one found its mark, tearing through her heart and soul. She heard someone in the crowd laugh. Then another. Soon, scattered chuckles filled the air like the sound of breaking glass. "Look at her face," someone whispered loudly enough for others to hear. "I knew this would happen," another voice added. Poor girl. She really thought she could catch Trevor Hamilton. Amara's hands shook as she gripped her bouquet of white roses. The flowers her mother had spent hours arranging. The flowers that were supposed to be part of the happiest day of her life. Trevor continued speaking, and each word was a nail in the coffin of her dreams. "I'm sorry it has to be like this, but I can't pretend anymore. We're too different. You work at a coffee shop. I run a company. You come from the South Side. I come from Beacon Hill. It would never work." The laughter grew louder. Someone started clapping slowly, mockingly. Others joined in. The sound echoed off the cathedral walls, bouncing back at her from every direction. "At least he's honest," a woman's voice carried from the middle section. "Better now than after they're married," someone else agreed. Amara wanted to run, but her feet felt rooted to the marble floor. Her beautiful African-American skin, which Trevor had once said he loved, now felt like it was burning under the stares of all these people. Her carefully styled hair, which had taken 3 hours at the salon that morning, felt heavy on her head. The red roses in her bouquet matched the red dress her maid of honor wore. Even the flowers seemed to mock her now. Everything was supposed to be perfect. The colors, the music, the vows. Instead, it was all falling apart in front of everyone who mattered to her. "I think we should all go home now," Trevor announced to the crowd. He straightened his tie and looked around the church like he was dismissing a business meeting. "There won't be a wedding today. Or any day." He walked down the aisle without looking back. His groomsmen followed him, their faces a mixture of embarrassment and relief. They had known. They had all known this was going to happen, and none of them had warned her. The congregation began to stir. People stood up, gathering their purses and coats. The whispers grew louder as they realized the show was over. "What about the reception?" someone called out. "The poor caterers," another voice added with fake concern. Amara finally found her voice. "Wait," she called out, but Trevor was already at the doors of the church. "Trevor, please. We can talk about this. We can work it out." He paused at the entrance and turned back to look at her one last time. "There's nothing to work out, Amara. I'm done pretending. I'm done trying to make this work. Find someone more suited to your station in life." The doors of the cathedral swung shut behind him with a sound that felt final as a judge's gavel. Amara stood alone at the altar, still holding her bouquet, still wearing her dream dress that now felt like a costume from a play that had ended badly. The guests filed out slowly, their conversations growing more animated as they reached the parking lot. She could hear car doors slamming and engines starting. Her mother rushed to the altar, her face streaked with tears. "Baby, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry this happened to you." Her father joined them, his jaw tight with anger. That boy has no class. No dignity. To do this here in front of everyone. But Amara barely heard them. She was staring at the empty space where Trevor had stood just minutes before. 3 years of her life. 3 years of planning, dreaming, saving money for this day. 3 years of believing that love was enough to bridge any gap between two people. The church felt enormous and empty now. The flowers on the altar, the white ribbons on the pews, the unity candle that would never be lit. All of it was still there, waiting for a wedding that would never happen. Her best friend Rachel appeared at her side, still wearing her red maid of honor dress. "We need to get you out of here," she said gently. "People are taking pictures outside." Through the stained glass windows, Amara could see flashes going off in the parking lot. In the age of social media, her humiliation would be online within hours. The hashtags were probably already being created. The memes would follow soon after. She had planned every detail of this day for months. The dress had cost her 3 months' salary from the coffee shop where she worked. The shoes pinched her feet, but she had bought them because they matched the dress perfectly. Her grandmother's pearl necklace was supposed to be her something old. The diamond earrings Trevor had given her last Christmas were supposed to be her something new. Now they all felt like evidence of her foolishness. As she walked down the aisle in reverse, passing the empty pews and abandoned flower petals, Amara tried to hold her head high. But inside she felt like she was breaking into 1,000 pieces. Each step took her further from the altar where her dreams had died and closer to a future she could not imagine. The heavy doors of the cathedral opened one final time as she left. Outside, a few stragglers lingered, their phones still recording, their faces hungry for more drama. But Amara walked past them all, her chin up and her heart shattered, not knowing that in just a few hours her life would take a turn that would change everything. Have you ever been embarrassed in front of everyone you know? Have you ever felt like giving up when life hits you this hard? If this story touches your heart, please subscribe and tell us in the comments what you would do in Amara's situation. Your support means everything to writers like us who believe in second chances and happy endings. The parking lot of St. Mary's Cathedral felt like a gauntlet Amara had to walk through. Every step in her white heels on the asphalt seemed to echo like gunshots. Cars were pulling away, their occupants stealing glances at her through tinted windows. Some people had the decency to look away when she passed. Others stared openly, their phones still recording. Her mother, Dorothy Johnson, kept a protective arm around her shoulders. "Don't you pay them any mind, baby? Don't you give them the satisfaction?" But Amara could hear the whispers anyway. The voices carried on the September air, each comment landing like a slap. "I always knew Trevor was too good for her. 3 years she wasted on that man. At least she found out now instead of after they had children." Rachel grabbed Amara's other arm. "My car is right over there. We can go to my apartment and figure out what to do next." "What about all the people at the reception hall?" Amara asked, her voice hollow. "The caterers, the band, the photographer. Everyone is expecting a wedding party." Her father, Robert Johnson, walked behind them, his face dark with anger. "I'll handle all that. You don't worry about any of it. That boy should be the one dealing with this mess, not you." They reached Rachel's blue Honda Civic, and Amara tried to get into the passenger seat. But the dress was too big, too puffy. The layers of tulle and satin that were supposed to make her feel like a princess now made her feel like she was drowning in fabric. Rachel had to help gather the dress and stuff it into the car. "We're going to have to do something about this dress," Rachel said gently. "You can't wear it all day." Amara looked down at herself. The white fabric was already getting dirty from the parking lot. There was a small tear near the hem where she had stepped on it. The dress that had been her pride and joy that morning now felt like a symbol of her humiliation. "I spent 3 months' salary on this dress," she whispered. "I can never wear it again." "We'll figure something out," Dorothy said, getting into the back seat. "Maybe we can return it." "You can't return a wedding dress after it's been worn to a wedding that didn't happen," Amara said, and for the first time she almost laughed. The situation was so awful it was almost funny. Almost. Rachel started the car and pulled out of the parking lot. As they drove away from the cathedral, Amara watched the building shrink in the side mirror. The place where she had expected to become Mrs. Trevor Hamilton was now just another building in Boston, another landmark of her failure. Her phone buzzed with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, social media alerts. She turned it face down on her lap, not ready to deal with the digital aftermath of her public humiliation. "The reception was supposed to start in an hour," she said to no one in particular. 200 people are going to show up at the Marriott expecting dinner and dancing. Your father and I will go over there and explain what happened," Dorothy said. We'll make sure everyone knows this wasn't your choice. Robert's voice was tight with controlled anger. That Hamilton boy is going to hear from me. You don't treat a lady like that. You don't embarrass a woman in front of her whole family and community. Daddy, please don't make this worse, Amara begged. I just want it to be over. But she knew it wouldn't be over anytime soon. Trevor Hamilton was from one of Boston's old money families. His father owned 3 hotels and a chain of restaurants. Trevor himself ran a successful real estate development company. When rich people in Boston had drama, it became gossip for weeks. And she was just Amara Johnson from Mattapan who made coffee for a living and dreamed of bigger things. They pulled into Rachel's apartment complex in Cambridge. It was a modest building, nothing fancy, but it felt like a safe haven after the cathedral. Rachel lived on the 3rd floor, and getting Amara up the stairs in the wedding dress proved to be another challenge. I should have thought this through better, Rachel said, tugging at the dress as they navigated the narrow stairwell. Maybe we should have gone to your parents' house. No, Amara said quickly. I can't face the neighbors yet. I can't handle their pity. Rachel's apartment was small but cozy. She had decorated it in warm colors: yellow throw pillows, green plants by the windows, blue artwork on the walls. Everything was bright and cheerful, the opposite of how Amara felt. First things first, Rachel said, heading to her bedroom. Let's get you out of that dress and into something comfortable. In Rachel's bedroom, Amara stood in front of the full-length mirror. The woman looking back at her seemed like a stranger. Her makeup, which had been perfect that morning, was now streaked with tears. Her hair, which had been styled in an elegant updo, was falling apart. And the dress just hung on her like a white shroud. Rachel found a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt. These will be too small, but they're better than the dress. Getting out of the wedding dress was like shedding a skin. Each layer that came off felt like removing another piece of the dream she had built around Trevor Hamilton. The corset, the petticoat, the endless buttons down the back. Rachel had to help with all of it. When she finally stood in the borrowed clothes, Amara felt lighter physically but heavier emotionally. The wedding dress lay in a heap on Rachel's bedroom floor like a deflated balloon. What am I going to do? She asked, staring at her reflection again. Without the dress and the formal hair and makeup, she looked like herself again. Amara Johnson, 26 years old, coffee shop employee, newly single. You're going to take it one day at a time, Rachel said, sitting on the bed beside her. You're going to remember that you're strong and beautiful and worth more than Trevor Hamilton ever deserved. Dorothy came into the bedroom carrying a cup of tea. I called your Aunt Linda. She's handling the reception situation. She's going to make sure all the vendors get paid and the guests get fed. Don't you worry about any of that. I can't afford to pay for a wedding reception that didn't happen, Amara said, panic rising in her voice. We'll figure it out, Robert called from the living room. The Hamilton family has money. They should be responsible for this mess. Amara's phone buzzed again. This time she picked it up and saw dozens of notifications. Facebook posts, Instagram tags, text messages from people she hadn't heard from in years. Everyone wanted to know what happened, wanted the inside story, wanted to offer their fake sympathy or genuine concern. One message stood out. It was from Trevor's sister, Caroline Hamilton. Amara, I'm so sorry about what my brother did today. He's an idiot and a coward. If you need anything, please let me know. Caroline. It was the first message that didn't feel like curiosity or pity. It felt like genuine kindness from someone who understood how wrong Trevor had been. But even Caroline's kindness couldn't fill the hole that had been torn in Amara's heart. 3 years of her life, gone. 3 years of believing in a future that Trevor had never really wanted. 3 years of trying to fit into his world, of changing herself to be good enough for his family and friends. The worst part was that she had seen the signs. Trevor's parents had never warmed up to her, despite her best efforts. His friends always seemed surprised when he brought her to their gatherings. He never posted pictures of them together on social media, always making excuses about keeping his private life private. But love had made her blind to all of it. Love had made her believe that if she just tried hard enough, loved him deeply enough, proved herself worthy enough, everything would work out. Now she was sitting in her best friend's bedroom in borrowed clothes, trying to figure out how to rebuild a life she had shaped entirely around a man who had never really loved her back. The sun was setting outside Rachel's window, painting the room in shades of orange and pink. In a few hours it would be completely dark. Tomorrow would be a new day, the first day of whatever came after this. But tonight, Amara just wanted to disappear. The next morning came too soon and not soon enough. Amara had spent the night on Rachel's couch, staring at the ceiling and replaying every moment of the previous day. The sun streaming through the living room windows felt accusatory, like nature itself was asking why she was hiding inside when life was supposed to go on. Rachel had gone to work early, leaving behind coffee and a note that said, "You are stronger than you know. Take all the time you need. Your friend who believes in you." But Amara couldn't stay inside anymore. The walls felt like they were closing in, and her phone kept buzzing with messages she didn't want to read. She needed air, space, somewhere to think without being surrounded by reminders of normal life going on around her. She borrowed a pair of Rachel's jeans and a green sweater, both slightly too small but better than the wedding dress that still lay crumpled on the bedroom floor. Her own clothes were all at her apartment, the apartment she had shared with Trevor until 2 weeks ago when he had suggested they shouldn't live together before marriage. Another red flag she had ignored. The Commons seemed like the right place to go. Boston Common had always been her refuge when life got complicated. The wide open spaces, the pond, the trees that changed with every season. It was public enough that she wouldn't feel completely alone, but big enough that she could find a quiet corner to think. She walked slowly through the park, past joggers and dog walkers and tourists taking pictures of the swan boats. Everyone seemed to have somewhere to go, something important to do. She felt invisible and exposed at the same time, like everyone was staring at her but no one really saw her. Near the pond, she found an empty bench under a large oak tree. The September air was crisp but not cold, perfect for sitting outside and trying to make sense of everything that had happened. She pulled Rachel's sweater tighter around herself and sat down. For the first time since leaving the cathedral, she was truly alone with her thoughts. No one trying to comfort her, no one offering advice or sympathy, no phone buzzing with messages. Just her and the mess her life had become. The ducks on the pond moved in lazy circles, occasionally dipping their heads under the water to search for food. Children laughed as they fed the ducks from bags of breadcrumbs their parents had brought. Normal families doing normal things on a normal Saturday morning. Amara tried to imagine what her Saturday morning was supposed to look like. She and Trevor should have been on a plane to Hawaii by now, starting their honeymoon. Instead, she was sitting alone on a park bench, wearing borrowed clothes and trying not to cry in public. "You look sad." The voice was small and clear, belonging to a child. Amara looked up to see a little girl standing in front of the bench. She appeared to be about 6 years old, with blonde curls and bright blue eyes. She wore a maroon dress with white tights and shiny black shoes. "I'm okay, sweetie," Amara said, trying to smile. "Are you here with your family?" The little girl nodded toward a man who was standing about 20 feet away, talking on his phone. He was tall and well-dressed, wearing a navy blue sweater and khaki pants. Even from a distance, Amara could tell he was handsome in that classic refined way that spoke of good breeding and expensive education. "That's my daddy," the little girl said. "He's always on his phone, but he says it's because he has to take care of lots of people." "What's your name?" Amara asked. "Sophie Morrison." "What's your name?" "I'm Amara." "It's nice to meet you, Sophie." Sophie climbed up onto the bench beside Amara without being invited. Her confidence and friendliness were refreshing after a day of pitying looks and awkward conversations. "You are pretty," Sophie announced, studying Amara's face with the serious attention that only children can manage. "Really pretty? Like a princess in my storybooks." The simple compliment hit Amara harder than all of Rachel's reassurances or her mother's comfort. This child, who had no reason to lie or flatter, thought she was pretty. After spending a day feeling ugly and unwanted, those words felt like water in a desert. "Thank you, Sophie. You're very pretty too." "I know," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "Daddy says I look like my mommy did when she was little. My mommy is in heaven now, but Daddy has pictures of her everywhere in our house." The casual way Sophie mentioned her mother's death made Amara's heart ache. This beautiful little girl had lost her mother, and yet here she was, bright and confident and kind to strangers. "I'm sorry about your mommy," Amara said gently. "It's okay. She's not sick anymore and Daddy says she watches over us all the time." Sophie swung her legs, too short to reach the ground from the bench. "Why do you look sad? Did something bad happen to you?" The question was so direct, so innocent that Amara almost laughed. "Something disappointing happened. But I'll be okay. Daddy says when disappointing things happen, it just means something better is coming. He says life is like a big puzzle and sometimes you think a piece fits, but then you find out it doesn't, and that's okay because the right piece is still coming." The wisdom coming from this 6-year-old was startling. Amara found herself really listening, not just humoring a child but considering the truth in what Sophie was saying. "Your daddy sounds very smart." "He is. He knows everything. Well, almost everything. He doesn't know how to braid hair very well, but Maria helps with that. Maria takes care of our house and she's teaching Daddy how to do girl things. Sophie chattered on about her life, her school, her friends, her daddy's work. She was one of those children who seemed comfortable talking to anyone, confident in her place in the world. Amara found herself relaxing for the first time in 24 hours. Sophie Morrison, what have I told you about talking to strangers? The voice belonged to the man who had been on his phone. He approached the bench with long strides, concern clear on his face. Up close he was even more impressive. Tall, probably in his mid-30s, with dark hair and kind eyes. His clothes were expensive but not flashy, the kind of understated elegance that comes from having money but not needing to prove it. She's not a stranger, Daddy. She's Amara and she's really pretty. Look at her. Amara felt heat rise in her cheeks. She started to stand up from the bench, ready to apologize for letting his daughter bother her. Please don't get up, the man said, extending his hand. I'm Richard Morrison and apparently you've met my daughter Sophie. I apologize if she's been bothering you. She hasn't been bothering me at all, Amara said, shaking his hand. She's delightful. I'm Amara Johnson. Richard Morrison. The name sounded familiar, but Amara couldn't place it immediately. He had the kind of presence that suggested importance, success, influence. But his manner was warm and approachable, nothing like the arrogant rich men she had encountered through Trevor. Daddy, I told you she was pretty. Look at her eyes. They're like chocolate but the good kind, not the bitter kind. Sophie, Richard said with gentle warning in his voice. It's okay, Amara said, surprised to find herself laughing. She's very observant. Richard sat down on the bench on the other side of Sophie, who seemed pleased to have both adults' attention. I hope you don't mind me saying so, but you do look like you've had a difficult day. Is there anything we can do to help? The offer of help from a complete stranger should have felt intrusive or suspicious. But something about Richard Morrison's manner made it feel genuine. Maybe it was the way Sophie had trusted her immediately, or maybe it was the kindness in his eyes, but Amara found herself wanting to accept rather than politely decline. That's very kind of you, but I'm fine. Just working through some things. Daddy helps people all the time, Sophie announced. He helped Mrs. Patterson when her husband got sick. And he helped the man at the grocery store when his car broke down. And he helped my school get new computers. Sophie, not everyone wants help from strangers, Richard said gently. But Amara was looking at him with new interest. This was Richard Morrison. She had seen his name in the newspaper, heard it mentioned on the local news. He was some kind of business owner, involved in charity work, one of those wealthy Bostonians who actually used their money to make a difference. You're the Richard Morrison, she said. Morrison Development Company. The Children's Hospitals. The Scholarship Foundation. Guilty as charged, he said with a modest smile. Though I hope my reputation isn't too terrible. No, you do good work. I've read about your company in the newspaper. Sophie looked back and forth between them like she was watching a tennis match. Are you going to be friends now? Because I like Amara, and if Daddy likes her too, maybe she can come have dinner with us. Sophie, Richard said, his cheeks reddening slightly. You can't just invite people to dinner. Why not? You always say our house is too big and too quiet. And Amara looks like she needs a good dinner. She's too skinny. Amara found herself laughing again, really laughing for the first time in days. This child was absolutely fearless, and her father was clearly wrapped around her little finger. You know what? Richard said, looking directly at Amara. Sophie's right. Our house is too big and too quiet, and you look like you could use a good meal and some friendly company. Would you consider joining us for dinner tonight? No pressure, but the invitation is genuine. Every instinct told Amara to decline politely, to go back to Rachel's apartment and continue hiding from the world. But something about this little girl and her kind father made her want to say yes. Maybe it was their genuine warmth, or maybe she was just tired of feeling sorry for herself. I don't want to impose, she began. You're not imposing if we're inviting you, Sophie said logically. Please say yes. I can show you my room and my dollhouse, and Maria makes the best roast chicken in the whole world. Amara looked from Sophie to Richard, seeing the same hopeful expression on both their faces. These people, who owed her nothing, who had known her for less than an hour, were offering her kindness with no strings attached. After a day of feeling worthless and rejected, their simple acceptance felt like a gift. Okay, she said, surprising herself. Yes, I'd like that very much. Sophie clapped her hands and bounced on the bench. This is going to be so fun. Daddy, can we go home now and get ready? Richard stood up and offered Amara his hand. Our house is in Beacon Hill. I can drive you, or if you prefer, I can give you the address and you can meet us there. I'll ride with you if that's okay. I don't have a car with me today. As they walked toward the parking area, Sophie skipping between them, Amara realized she felt lighter than she had in hours. Not healed, not fixed, but hopeful. Maybe Sophie was right about disappointing things making room for better things. Maybe her puzzle piece really had been the wrong fit, and the right one was still coming. She had no way of knowing that this chance meeting in the park would change her life completely. All she knew was that for the first time since leaving the altar, she was looking forward to what came next. Richard Morrison's house was everything Amara had expected and more. Located on prestigious Beacon Hill, it was a 3-story brownstone with ivy climbing the red brick walls and window boxes filled with late-season flowers. The kind of house that spoke of old money, established families, and the sort of life she had dreamed of but never quite achieved with Trevor. "Welcome to our home," Richard said as he held the front door open for her. The entrance hall was elegant but not intimidating, with warm wood floors and family photographs lining the walls. "Daddy, can I show Amara my room first?" Sophie asked, already tugging on Amara's hand. "Let's let our guest get settled first," Richard said. "Maria has dinner almost ready." As if summoned by her name, a kind-faced Latino woman appeared from what Amara assumed was the kitchen. She was probably in her 50s, with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun and an apron tied around her waist. "This must be the pretty lady Sophie told me about on the phone," Maria said with a warm smile and a slight accent. "I'm Maria Santos. I take care of this house and these 2 troublemakers. I'm Amara Johnson. Thank you so much for having me. I hope I'm not causing extra work." "Nonsense. It's good to have another woman in this house. Too much testosterone with just these 2. She winked at Richard, who rolled his eyes good-naturedly. The dining room was formal but comfortable, with a long mahogany table and chairs upholstered in deep blue fabric. The walls were lined with built-in bookcases filled with leather-bound volumes and family photographs. Everything was tasteful, expensive, but lived in. Sophie insisted on sitting next to Amara during dinner, keeping up a steady stream of chatter about her school, her friends, and her various activities. Richard listened with the patient attention of a father who genuinely enjoyed his daughter's company. "Sophie takes dance classes on Tuesday, art class on Wednesday, and swimming on Thursday," he explained to Amara. "She's convinced she can do everything." "I can do everything," Sophie said confidently. "Amara, what do you do? Do you have a job?" The innocent question hit a sensitive spot. Amara's job at the coffee shop suddenly seemed small and unimpressive in this grand dining room. But she had promised herself she wouldn't pretend to be someone she wasn't, not anymore. "I work at a coffee shop downtown," she said. "I make lattes and cappuccinos for people on their way to work." "That sounds fun," Sophie said. "I love coffee shops. They always smell good and sometimes they have cookies." Richard was watching Amara with interest, not judgment. "Which coffee shop?" "Grind Coffee on Washington Street. It's a small place, nothing fancy, but we have regular customers who become like family." "I know that place. They have excellent coffee. I've stopped in there a few times on my way to meetings downtown." The conversation flowed easily through dinner. Richard asked thoughtful questions about her work and her life, while Sophie interjected with observations and stories. Maria brought out course after course of delicious food: roast chicken with herbs, perfectly cooked vegetables, fresh bread that was still warm from the oven. "Maria, this is incredible," Amara said after taking a bite of the chicken. "Sophie was right about your cooking." "She's been with us since Sophie was 2, Richard explained. "After my wife died, I don't know what we would have done without Maria." There was a moment of comfortable silence as they continued eating. Amara found herself relaxing completely for the first time in days. The warmth of this house, the easy acceptance of this family, made her feel human again. After dinner, Sophie got her wish to show Amara her room. It was a little girl's dream: pink walls with white trim, a canopy bed with fairy lights, and shelves full of books and toys. But it wasn't spoiled rich kid excessive. Everything was chosen with care and love. "Daddy reads to me every night," Sophie said, pointing to a rocking chair by the window. "Even when he's tired from work. Anne Maria braids my hair in the morning, and she's teaching me Spanish words." "You're very lucky," Amara said, sitting on the edge of Sophie's bed. "I know. Daddy says some kids don't have daddies or mommies, so I should always be grateful." Sophie climbed up beside her. "Are you grateful for your daddy?" "Yes, I am. He's a good man like yours." "Are you married? Do you have kids?" The questions were so direct, so innocent. Amara took a breath before answering. "No, I'm not married. I thought I was going to be, but it didn't work out." "Maybe that's good," Sophie said thoughtfully. "Maybe the person wasn't right for you." Daddy says when something doesn't work out, it's usually because something better is coming. Your daddy says a lot of smart things. He does. And he's really good at helping people. He helped build a new playground at my school, and he gives money to help sick kids, and he finds jobs for people who need work. Sophie looked at Amara with sudden inspiration. Maybe he could help you too. Before Amara could respond, Richard appeared in the doorway. Sophie, it's getting close to bedtime. Why don't you get ready while Amara and I have some coffee downstairs? In the living room, Richard poured coffee from a silver service set. The room was masculine but warm, with leather furniture and a fireplace surrounded by built-in bookshelves. Family photos were everywhere. Sophie as a baby, Sophie learning to walk, Sophie's first day of school. And in several frames, a beautiful blonde woman who had to be Sophie's mother. Your wife was lovely, Amara said, noticing Richard's gaze follow hers to the photographs. She was. Cancer took her when Sophie was 4. It's been just the two of us for 2 years now, with Maria's help. His voice was matter-of-fact, but Amara could hear the old pain underneath. I'm sorry for your loss. Sophie seems like a remarkable little girl. She is. She's taught me more about resilience and hope than I ever learned in business school. Richard handed her a cup of coffee and settled into the chair across from her. Speaking of which, I hope you don't mind my asking, but what happened yesterday? Sophie mentioned you looked sad when she met you. The question was gentle but direct. Amara found herself wanting to tell the truth, something about Richard's manner that made her feel safe to be vulnerable. I was supposed to get married yesterday, she said quietly. My fiancé decided at the altar, in front of 200 people, that I wasn't good enough for him after all. Richard's face darkened with anger. He did that publicly? At the altar? He said I wasn't enough. Not for him, not for his family, not for the life he wanted. The words still hurt to say, but somehow less than they had yesterday. What an absolute fool, Richard said with quiet intensity. And what a coward, to do that in front of your family and friends instead of having the conversation privately. Everyone laughed, Amara admitted. Some people actually laughed when it happened. Then they're fools too. Richard leaned forward in his chair. Amara, I've known you for exactly 6 hours, and in that time, you've been kind to my daughter, gracious in my home, and honest about a situation that must be incredibly painful. Any man who doesn't see your worth is blind. The sincerity in his voice made tears spring to Amara's eyes. Thank you. That means more than you know. I meant what Sophie said earlier about helping people. It's not charity, it's just what we do when we have the means to make a difference. Richard set down his coffee cup and looked at her directly. I'd like to offer you a job. Amara blinked in surprise. A job? My company is always looking for good people. You have customer service experience from the coffee shop, you're clearly intelligent and personable, and Sophie has already given you her stamp of approval, which counts for a lot in my book. Mr. Morrison, I appreciate the offer, but I can't accept charity. It's not charity. It's a job offer based on merit. I need someone in my customer relations department, someone who understands how to make people feel welcome and valued. The position pays $60,000 a year to start, with full benefits and opportunities for advancement. $60,000 a year. More than double what she made at the coffee shop. Enough to get her own place, build some savings, start over properly. I don't have a college degree, she said. I went to community college for 2 years, but I never finished. Experience matters more than degrees in customer relations. And if you want to continue your education, the company has a tuition assistance program. Amara felt overwhelmed. This was too much too fast. Why would you do this for someone you just met? Because I believe in giving people opportunities to succeed. Because my daughter likes you and she's an excellent judge of character. And because everyone deserves a chance to start over when life doesn't go according to plan. Before Amara could respond, Sophie appeared in her pajamas, ready for her bedtime story. Are you going to work with Daddy now? She asked Amara hopefully. We're still talking about it, Richard said diplomatically. You should say yes, Sophie advised. Daddy's office has really good snacks, and there's a pretty lady named Jennifer who gives out stickers. After Richard tucked Sophie into bed, he and Amara returned to the living room. The offer hung in the air between them, life-changing and terrifying and wonderful all at once. I need some time to think about it, Amara said finally. Of course. Take all the time you need. The position will be there when you're ready. Can I ask you something? Why are you really doing this? Richard was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. Because 3 years ago when Jennifer died, I was drowning. I had a business to run, a 4-year-old daughter to raise, and I had no idea how to do either one without her. People stepped up to help me. Maria came to work for us. My business partner took on extra responsibilities. Friends and neighbors brought meals and offered babysitting. I learned that sometimes accepting help is the bravest thing you can do. And you think I need to be brave? I think you've already been brave. You survived yesterday with your dignity intact. You sat in that park today instead of hiding in bed. You came to dinner with strangers and let my daughter adopt you as her new friend. Richard smiled. Now you just need to decide what comes next. As Richard drove her back to Rachel's apartment, Amara stared out the window at the Boston streets. 24 hours ago, her life had been completely different. She had been Trevor Hamilton's fiancée, about to become part of his world through marriage. Now she was Amara Johnson, single woman with an unexpected job offer from one of Boston's most successful businessmen. Think about it, Richard said as they pulled up in front of Rachel's building. But don't think too long. Good opportunities don't wait forever. Mr. Morrison. Richard, thank you. For dinner, for your kindness, for the offer. Your family made me feel human again today. Sophie made me promise to tell you that you're invited for dinner anytime. She's already planning to show you her dollhouse collection next time. As Amara walked up the stairs to Rachel's apartment, she felt something she hadn't felt in days: excitement about the future. Not the future she had planned with Trevor, but a new future that was entirely her own to create. Rachel was waiting with a bottle of wine and a dozen questions about where Amara had been all day. As they sat on the couch and Amara told the story of meeting Sophie and Richard Morrison, she realized that maybe Sophie had been right about puzzle pieces. Maybe Trevor had been the wrong piece, and maybe Richard Morrison and his incredible offer were part of the right picture that was just beginning to come together. What would you do if a stranger offered you a chance to completely change your life? Would you have the courage to start over, or would fear hold you back? If stories of second chances and new beginnings inspire you, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. Sometimes the support of strangers can change everything. Monday morning arrived with September sunshine streaming through the windows of Rachel's apartment. Amara woke up on the couch feeling something she hadn't felt in years: genuine excitement about going to work. After spending the weekend thinking about Richard Morrison's offer, she had called him Sunday evening to accept the position. "I was hoping you'd say yes," he had said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "Can you start Monday morning? I know it's short notice, but I think jumping right in might be easier than waiting." Now, as she stood in front of Rachel's bathroom mirror, Amara tried to calm her nerves. She was wearing the only professional outfit she owned that wasn't at her old apartment with Trevor. A navy blue dress that Rachel had lent her and black pumps that were slightly too big. "You look perfect," Rachel said, appearing in the doorway with a cup of coffee. "Professional, competent, ready to take on the world." "I feel like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not," Amara admitted. "What if I can't do this job? What if I don't fit in with all those business people?" "Stop it. You served coffee to business people for 3 years. You know how to talk to them, how to make them comfortable. This is just the same skill set in a different environment." Rachel was right, but that didn't make Amara any less nervous as she took the subway downtown to Morrison Development Company's offices. The building was a sleek glass tower in the financial district, the kind of place she had walked past dozens of times but never imagined working inside. The lobby was all marble and modern art, with a security desk and elevators that required key cards to access. Amara gave her name to the security guard, who checked his computer and handed her a visitor's badge. 23rd floor, he said with a friendly smile. "Mr. Morrison's assistant is expecting you." The elevator ride to the 23rd floor felt like it took forever. Amara watched the numbers climb and tried to remember everything Richard had told her about the position. Customer relations, helping clients feel welcome and valued, being the friendly face of Morrison Development Company. When the elevator doors opened, Amara stepped into a reception area that was elegant but warm. The walls were painted in soft gray, with beautiful photography of Boston landmarks. The furniture was modern but comfortable, and everything was spotlessly clean. "You must be Amara Johnson," said a woman approaching from behind the reception desk. She appeared to be in her 40s, with short dark hair and a welcoming smile. She wore a red blazer that looked both professional and approachable. "I'm Jennifer Walsh, Mr. Morrison's executive assistant. He's told me wonderful things about you." "Thank you. I'm excited to be here, though I'll admit I'm a little nervous." "Everyone feels that way on their first day. Richard, Mr. Morrison, is one of the best bosses I've ever worked for. He believes in supporting his employees and helping them succeed." Jennifer gestured toward a hallway lined with offices. "Let me give you a quick tour, then we'll get you settled in your new workspace." The tour was impressive but not intimidating. Morrison Development Company occupied 3 floors of the building, with different departments handling various aspects of the business: real estate development, property management, construction oversight, and customer relations. Everyone Jennifer introduced seemed genuinely friendly and welcoming. "The company culture here is really collaborative," Jennifer explained as they walked. "Richard believes that when employees feel valued and supported, they do their best work. We have flexible schedules, excellent benefits, and lots of opportunities for professional development." Amara's new office was small but lovely, with a window overlooking Boston Harbor and a desk that was already equipped with a computer, phone, and everything else she would need. On the desk was a small bouquet of flowers with a note: "Welcome to the team. We're lucky to have you. Richard and Sophie." "Sophie helped pick out the flowers," Jennifer said with a knowing smile. "She told her father that purple flowers would match your pretty skin. That little girl has her daddy wrapped around her finger. She's special." "They both are." Jennifer sat down in the chair across from Amara's desk and pulled out a folder. "Let's go over your responsibilities and get you started. Your main role will be working with our residential clients, the people who buy condos and townhouses from our developments. You'll be their primary contact throughout the purchase process, making sure they feel informed and supported." For the next hour, Jennifer walked Amara through the computer system, the client files, and the various procedures she would need to know. It was a lot to absorb, but Amara found herself feeling more confident as Jennifer explained each task. "The most important thing to remember," Jennifer said, "is that buying a home is usually the biggest purchase people ever make. They're nervous, excited, scared, and hopeful all at once. Your job is to make them feel like they're in good hands." "That makes sense. It's like making the perfect coffee for someone's morning. You want them to leave feeling better than when they came in." "Exactly. You're going to do great at this." Around 10 o'clock, Richard appeared in the doorway of Amara's office. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit with a blue tie, looking every inch the successful businessman. But his smile was the same warm, kind expression she remembered from dinner at his house. "How's the first day going?" he asked, stepping into the office. "Really well, thanks to Jennifer. Everyone has been so welcoming." "Good. I was hoping you'd say that." He sat down in the chair Jennifer had vacated. "I wanted to check in and make sure you have everything you need. If you have questions or concerns about anything, please don't hesitate to ask. Actually, there is one thing. I feel underdressed compared to everyone else here. I don't really have professional clothes beyond this dress." Richard nodded thoughtfully. "That's an easy fix. The company has a clothing allowance for new employees in client-facing positions. Jennifer can give you the details, but essentially, you can purchase a professional wardrobe and the company will reimburse you up to $1,500. $1,500? Amara's voice came out higher than she intended. "You'll be representing Morrison Development Company to our clients. We want you to feel confident and professional." Richard's tone was matter-of-fact, like this was the most normal thing in the world. After Richard left, Jennifer returned with a stack of client files and more information about company policies and benefits. The clothing allowance was just one of many perks that seemed almost too good to be true: health insurance, dental and vision coverage, 2 weeks paid vacation, sick leave, and the tuition assistance program Richard had mentioned. "It seems too generous," Amara said as Jennifer went through the benefits package. "Richard believes that taking care of employees is good business. When people feel valued and secure, they stay with the company longer and do better work. We have one of the lowest turnover rates in the city." At lunchtime, Jennifer offered to take Amara shopping for professional clothes. They went to a department store in downtown Boston, where Jennifer helped Amara select blazers, dresses, pants, and blouses that would create a complete professional wardrobe. "The key is to choose pieces that can mix and match," Jennifer explained as they looked through racks of clothing. "That way you'll have enough variety to look different every day without needing dozens of outfits." Amara tried on a navy blue blazer with matching pants and looked at herself in the dressing room mirror. The woman looking back at her seemed confident, professional, capable. Not the coffee shop employee who had been humiliated at the altar 5 days ago, but someone new. Someone who belonged in a corporate office, someone who could handle important responsibilities. "You look fantastic," Jennifer said when Amara emerged from the dressing room. "That color is perfect with your skin tone." By the end of her first day, Amara had a complete professional wardrobe, a desk full of client files to review, and a growing sense that she might actually be able to succeed in this new role. As she was packing up her purse to leave, Richard appeared in her doorway again. "How was day 1? "Overwhelming in the best possible way. Thank you again for this opportunity." You don't need to keep thanking me. You're going to earn every penny of your salary. He leaned against the doorframe casually. Sophie wanted me to invite you to dinner again tonight. She's been asking about you all day, wondering how your first day at Daddy's work was going. I'd love to see Sophie, but I don't want to impose on your family time every night. You're not imposing. Sophie doesn't make friends easily, she's a little shy with most adults. But she connected with you immediately. Honestly, it would make her very happy if you came to dinner. How could she say no to that? As they rode the elevator down together, Richard asked about her day, her impressions of the office, whether Jennifer had been helpful in getting her situated. His questions were thoughtful, like he genuinely cared about her experience and wanted to make sure she was comfortable. At the Morrison house that evening, Sophie greeted Amara with a huge hug and a dozen questions about her first day of work. Over dinner, she peppered Amara with more questions. Did she have her own office? Did she like the other people? Did Daddy show her the good snacks? Sophie, let Amara eat her dinner, Richard said gently, but he was smiling at his daughter's enthusiasm. It's okay, Amara said. I love talking to her. Yes, Sophie, I have my own office with a window that looks out at the water. Yes, I like the other people very much. And yes, your daddy showed me where the good snacks are hidden. After dinner, Sophie insisted on showing Amara her dollhouse, an elaborate 3-story Victorian mansion that was a perfect miniature replica of their own home. Every room was furnished with tiny furniture and accessories, and Sophie knew the story of every little doll family that lived inside. This is the mommy and daddy and little girl, Sophie said, pointing to 3 small dolls in the master bedroom. The mommy has blonde hair like my real mommy did, and the daddy has dark hair like my real daddy, and the little girl has blonde hair like me. It's beautiful, Sophie. Did you choose all the furniture yourself? Daddy helped. We go to the toy store together and pick out new things for the house. It's our special thing we do together. Later, as Richard drove Amara back to Rachel's apartment, she reflected on how much her life had changed in less than a week. 7 days ago, she had been planning to marry Trevor Hamilton and become part of his world. Now she was building her own world with her own job, her own future, and new friends who seemed to value her for exactly who she was. Thank you for dinner again, she said as they pulled up to Rachel's building. And thank you for giving me a chance to prove myself at work. You don't need to prove anything to me, Richard said. I already know you're going to be wonderful at this job. The question is whether you know it. As she walked up the stairs to Rachel's apartment, Amara felt a lightness in her step that hadn't been there in months. Maybe years. For the first time in as long as she could remember, she was excited about tomorrow. Not because of what someone else might do for her, but because of what she might accomplish for herself. Rachel was waiting with a bottle of champagne and a grin. How did it go? I want to hear everything. As they sat on the couch and Amara told Rachel about her first day at Morrison Development Company, she realized that her new beginning wasn't just about the job. It was about discovering who she was when she wasn't trying to be good enough for someone else. It was about finding her own worth, her own strength, her own path forward. And tomorrow she would wake up and continue building this new life, one day at a time. 3 weeks into her new job at Morrison Development Company, Amara was settling into a routine that felt both comfortable and exciting. Each morning she would arrive at the office early, review her client files and prepare for the day's appointments and phone calls. She had discovered that she genuinely enjoyed helping people navigate the process of buying their first home, and her clients seemed to appreciate her patience and attention to detail. Mrs. Peterson on line 2, Jennifer announced over the intercom. She has questions about the closing date for her condo. Amara picked up the phone with a smile. Mrs. Peterson was a widow in her 60s who was downsizing from the family home where she had raised 4 children. She called at least twice a week with questions, but Amara didn't mind. Buying a home was scary when you were doing it alone for the first time. Hi, Mrs. Peterson. How can I help you today? Oh, Amara, thank goodness it's you. I've been so worried about the inspection results. The report says there are some issues with the plumbing, and I don't know what that means for my closing date. For the next 20 minutes, Amara walked Mrs. Peterson through the inspection report, explaining each item in simple terms and assuring her that the plumbing issues were minor and easily fixable. By the end of the conversation, Mrs. Peterson was laughing about her earlier panic. You're an angel, Amara. I don't know what I would do without you holding my hand through all this. That's what I'm here for, Mrs. Peterson. Call me anytime you have questions. As she hung up the phone, Amara realized how much she had come to love these conversations. At the coffee shop, her interactions with customers had been brief and surface level. Here, she was building real relationships with people, helping them through one of the most important decisions of their lives. "You're a natural at this," said Tom Bradley, one of the senior sales agents, as he stopped by her office. Tom was in his 50s, a veteran of the real estate business who had initially been skeptical of Richard hiring someone with no industry experience. But over the past 3 weeks, he had become one of Amara's strongest supporters. "Thanks, Tom. I love the work. It shows. Mrs. Peterson isn't the only client singing your praises. I've had 3 people specifically ask if you'll be handling their transactions." Tom leaned against her desk. "Richard made a smart call bringing you on board." The praise felt good, but what felt even better was the growing confidence Amara felt in her abilities. She was learning quickly, asking good questions and finding solutions to problems. For the first time in her professional life, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Around 11 o'clock, Richard appeared in her doorway with 2 cups of coffee and a manila folder. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Of course." Amara gestured to the chair across from her desk. Richard handed her one of the coffees and sat down. "I wanted to talk to you about something. We have a new development project starting next month. Luxury townhouses in Cambridge. It's our biggest residential project this year, and I'd like you to be the primary client relations contact." Amara nearly spilled her coffee. "The primary contact? For your biggest project? You've proven yourself over the past 3 weeks. Your clients love you, you understand the business, and you handle problems with grace and intelligence." Richard opened the folder and showed her architectural drawings and marketing materials. "These townhouses will sell for between $800,000 and $1.2 million. The clients will expect white glove service throughout the entire process. That's a lot of responsibility. It's also a lot of opportunity. The commission structure for this project is generous. If you handle 20 units, and I expect you will, you're looking at bonuses that could add up to $40,000 on top of your base salary." $40,000 in bonuses. Amara tried not to let her shock show on her face. She had never imagined making that kind of money. "I won't let you down," she said. "I know you won't. But there's one more thing." Richard's expression grew more serious. "This project will put you in contact with some of Boston's wealthiest families. Old money, new money, people who are used to getting their way and having their demands met immediately. It can be challenging." "You mean people like Trevor's family?" "Exactly like Trevor's family. Are you comfortable with that?" Amara thought about it for a moment. 3 weeks ago, the idea of dealing with wealthy, entitled clients would have terrified her. She would have worried about not being good enough, not fitting in, not measuring up to their expectations. But she felt different now. Stronger, more confident in her abilities. "I can handle it," she said firmly. "Good. Because there's something else I want to discuss with you." Richard closed the folder and looked at her directly. "I think you should consider going back to school to finish your degree. The company's tuition assistance program would cover most of the costs, and there are evening and weekend programs designed for working professionals." The suggestion caught Amara off guard. "You think I need more education to do this job?" "I think you're incredibly capable exactly as you are. But I also think you're someone who could go as far as you want to go in this business, and having a degree opens doors. It's not about what you need now, it's about what you might want 5 or 10 years from now. I never thought about going back to school. I assumed that ship had sailed. Nothing has sailed unless you decide it has. Think about it. We can discuss the details if you're interested." That afternoon, Amara found herself browsing college websites during her lunch break. Boston University had a continuing education program with business classes offered in the evenings and on weekends. Suffolk University had a similar program. The idea of going back to school felt both terrifying and exciting. Her phone rang, interrupting her research. It was Sophie, calling from Richard's office where she spent most afternoons after school. "Amara, Daddy said you're going to sell really expensive houses now. Does that mean you're getting rich?" Amara laughed. "I'm going to help people buy expensive houses. And I'm not getting rich, but I'm doing well. Can you come to dinner tonight? Maria is making tacos and I learned how to make guacamole. I'd love to come to dinner." "Good. And Amara? Daddy seems really happy lately. Maria says it's because he has you to help with work stuff, but I think it's because he likes having dinner with you." Before Amara could respond to that observation, Sophie had handed the phone back to Richard. "Sorry about that. She gets excited about dinner plans." "It's okay. She's right about the tacos. I wouldn't miss Maria's cooking." "Great. And Amara? Think about what we discussed regarding school. There's no pressure, but I think you'd be surprised by what you're capable of achieving." That evening at the Morrison house, over Maria's delicious tacos and Sophie's slightly lumpy but enthusiastic guacamole, Amara found herself talking about the possibility of going back to school. "I think it's a wonderful idea," Maria said. "Education is something no one can take away from you." "Will you still have time to come to dinner?" Sophie asked with concern. "I'll always have time for dinner with you," Amara assured her. Richard was quiet during most of the conversation, but Amara caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Later, as he was driving her home, he brought up the subject again. "What's holding you back from going back to school?" he asked as they stopped at a red light. "Fear mostly. Fear that I'm not smart enough, that I won't fit in with younger students, that I'll fail. Those are normal fears. But they're not reasons not to try." "Easy for you to say. You probably never failed at anything in your life." Richard was quiet for a moment. "I failed at the most important thing in my life," he said finally. "I failed to save my wife. I had all the money in the world, access to the best doctors, and I couldn't save her." The pain in his voice made Amara's chest tighten. "That wasn't your fault. Cancer isn't something you can fight with money or willpower. Logically, I know that. Emotionally, it took me 2 years to accept it." He glanced at her before turning his attention back to the road. "My point is that everyone fails at something. The question is whether you let that failure define you or whether you use it as motivation to try harder next time." They had reached Rachel's building, but neither of them moved to get out of the car. "Can I ask you something?" Amara said. "Of course. Why are you doing all this for me? The job, the bonuses, the encouragement about school. I know you said it's not charity, but—" Richard turned in his seat to face her fully. "Because I see potential in you that I don't think you see in yourself yet. Because Sophie adores you, and her judgment of people is better than mine. And because—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Because you make our lives better just by being in them." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning that neither of them was quite ready to address directly. "Thank you," Amara said softly. "For everything. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. You're going to do great things, Amara. With or without my help. I'm just glad I get to watch." As she walked up the stairs to Rachel's apartment, Amara felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the September evening. She was growing stronger every day, more confident in her abilities, more secure in her worth as a person. The scared, heartbroken woman who had been rejected at the altar a month ago felt like a different person. But more than that, she was starting to realize that her feelings for Richard Morrison were growing beyond gratitude and friendship. The way he looked at her, the way he listened when she talked, the way he believed in her potential. It was creating something new in her heart, something she wasn't sure she was ready to name yet. For now, it was enough to know that she was building a life she was proud of, surrounded by people who valued her exactly as she was. Tomorrow she would start researching degree programs more seriously. Tomorrow she would begin preparing for her role on the biggest project of her career. Tomorrow she would continue becoming the woman she was meant to be. But tonight she would fall asleep thinking about the way Richard had looked at her in the car, and the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the only one whose feelings were growing deeper. It had been 6 weeks since the wedding that never happened, and Amara was finally feeling like herself again. Better than herself, actually. She was succeeding at her new job, building genuine friendships with her co-workers, and had even enrolled in evening business classes at Suffolk University. The scared, heartbroken woman who had been humiliated at the altar felt like a character from someone else's story. She was reviewing client files in her office on a Thursday afternoon when Jennifer appeared in her doorway with an unusual expression on her face. "There's someone here to see you," Jennifer said carefully. "He says he's your former fiancé." Amara's stomach dropped. "Trevor is here? He's in the lobby. I can have security escort him out if you want." For a moment, Amara considered exactly that. She had no desire to see Trevor Hamilton, no interest in whatever he might have to say. But curiosity won out over self-preservation. "It's okay. I'll see him. But can you ask Tom to stay nearby, just in case?" "Of course." Amara took a few deep breaths and checked her reflection in her computer screen. She was wearing one of her new professional outfits, a maroon blazer with a black dress, paired with heels that made her feel tall and confident. Her hair was styled in a sleek bob, and she was wearing makeup that Jennifer had taught her to apply. She looked nothing like the coffee shop employee Trevor had known. The elevator ride to the lobby felt endless. When the doors opened, Amara saw Trevor immediately. He was standing by the windows, wearing an expensive suit and looking uncomfortable. When he turned and saw her, his eyes widened with surprise. "Amara. Well, you look different." "Hello, Trevor." Her voice was cool and professional. What are you doing here? I wanted to talk to you. Can we go somewhere private? Maybe get coffee? I'm at work. Whatever you have to say, you can say it here. Trevor looked around the elegant lobby, taking in the marble floors, the modern art, the general atmosphere of success and prosperity. This is where you work now? This is where I work. I heard you were working for Richard Morrison. I didn't believe it at first. His tone carried a mixture of surprise and something that sounded almost like jealousy. What did you want to talk about, Trevor? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she remembered from their time together. I made a mistake, Amara. A huge mistake. What I did at the altar. That wasn't me. That was my family's pressure, my own fears, my inability to stand up for what I knew was right. Amara felt a flicker of the old hurt, but it was distant now, like remembering pain from an injury that had healed long ago. What you did was humiliate me in front of everyone I care about. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I can't even express it in words. Trevor stepped closer to her. But I want to make it right. I want us to try again. Try again? The suggestion was so absurd that Amara almost laughed. I've been miserable without you. I've dated other women, but none of them are you. None of them make me feel the way you do. His voice was earnest, pleading. I love you, Amara. I never stopped loving you. You have a funny way of showing love. I was scared. Scared of what my family would think, scared of what my friends would say, scared that we were too different. Trevor reached out as if to touch her arm, but she stepped back. But I realize now that being scared was stupid. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Amara studied his face, looking for the man she had once loved enough to plan a life with. He was still handsome, still charming when he wanted to be. But looking at him now, she felt nothing. No anger, no hurt, no lingering affection. Just nothing. It's too late, Trevor. No, it's not. We can start over. We can have the wedding we planned, take the honeymoon to Hawaii. I've already talked to my parents, and they're willing to accept you now that you're working for Morrison Development Company. The words hit her like a slap. They're willing to accept me now? Because I have a different job? You have to understand, my family has certain expectations. No, Trevor. I don't have to understand anything. Amara's voice remained calm, but steel had entered her tone. You rejected me because I wasn't good enough for your family. Now you want me back because my job title has changed. Do you see how awful that is? It's not about the job title. It's about you being successful, having a future. I always had a future. I always had worth. You were just too shallow to see it. Trevor's face flushed with embarrassment or anger, she couldn't tell which. Look, I know I messed up, but we were good together. We can be good together again. We were never good together, Trevor. I was good to you. There's a difference. Amara, please. Just think about it. We don't have to rush into anything. We can date again, take our time, do it right this time. Before Amara could respond, she heard familiar voices approaching the lobby. Richard and Sophie were coming through the revolving doors, returning from Sophie's after-school dentist appointment. Sophie was chattering about something, and Richard was listening with the patient attention that made him such a good father. Amara. Sophie called out, running toward her with a bright smile. What are you doing down here? Did you come to meet us? Hi, sweetheart. I was just talking to someone. Richard approached, taking in the scene with sharp eyes. He looked from Amara to Trevor, and his expression grew protective. Richard Morrison, he said, extending his hand to Trevor with cool politeness. Trevor Hamilton. Trevor shook Richard's hand, and Amara could see him sizing up the competition. I was just trying to convince Amara to give me another chance. Is that so? Richard's voice was neutral, but Sophie had no such restraint. Are you the mean man who made Amara cry? Sophie asked Trevor with the brutal honesty that only children possess. Trevor looked uncomfortable. We had a misunderstanding. Daddy says when you hurt someone's feelings, you should say sorry and mean it. Did you say sorry? Sophie, why don't you go upstairs with Jennifer while I finish my conversation? Amara suggested gently. Okay. But I don't like him, Sophie announced, glaring at Trevor. He has mean eyes. After Sophie left with Jennifer, the three adults stood in uncomfortable silence for a moment. I should get back upstairs, Amara said finally. Trevor, I appreciate the apology, but my answer is no. I'm not interested in trying again. Because of him? Trevor gestured toward Richard with obvious disdain. Because of me? Because I know my worth now, and I'm not interested in being with someone who only values me when it's convenient. Trevor's face darkened. Fine. But don't come crying to me when this job doesn't work out. When Morrison gets tired of his charity case and you're back to making coffee for a living. The words were meant to hurt, to make her doubt herself and her new life. 6 weeks ago they might have worked. But now Amara just felt sorry for him. Goodbye, Trevor. She walked toward the elevators without looking back. Richard followed her, and they rode up to the 23rd floor in silence. It wasn't until they were back in her office with the door closed that either of them spoke. Are you okay? Richard asked. I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. Amara sat down at her desk and realized she was telling the truth. He wanted to get back together. And I realized that I don't feel anything for him anymore. Not love, not hate, not even anger. He's just irrelevant to my life now. Richard studied her face. He seemed to think I was the reason you turned him down. You're not the reason. Well, not in the way he thinks. Amara looked at Richard, this man who had given her so much more than a job. You helped me remember who I am when I'm not trying to be good enough for someone else. You showed me what it feels like to be valued and respected. Once you know how that feels, you can't go back to accepting less. Something shifted in Richard's expression. Amara? Before he could finish the sentence, Sophie burst through the door. Are you okay? Did the mean man leave? Can we go home now? I'm fine, Sophie. And yes, he's gone. Good. Daddy, can Amara come to dinner tonight? I want to make sure she's not sad. I'm not sad, Amara assured her. Actually, I feel really good. Like I passed some kind of test I didn't know I was taking. What kind of test? Sophie asked. The kind where you find out how strong you really are. That evening at dinner, Amara told Maria and Sophie about her encounter with Trevor. Sophie was outraged on her behalf, declaring that Trevor was stupid and mean and ugly, while Maria nodded approvingly at Amara's decision to reject him. A man who doesn't know your worth the first time doesn't deserve a second chance to figure it out, Maria said sagely. Later, as Richard was driving Amara home, he brought up the subject again. I'm proud of how you handled that today, he said. It couldn't have been easy. It was easier than I expected. I kept waiting to feel something, hurt, anger, temptation to give him another chance. But there was nothing there. How does that feel? Free. Like I finally closed a door that I should have closed a long time ago. They were stopped at a red light and Richard turned to look at her. For what it's worth, he was right about one thing. What's that? You do look different. Stronger, more confident. More yourself. I feel like myself. Maybe for the first time in my adult life. The light turned green and Richard drove on. But Amara could feel the weight of unspoken words between them, the growing awareness that their relationship was evolving into something neither of them had planned but both of them could feel building. For now, it was enough to know that she had faced her past and chosen her future. Trevor Hamilton was part of her history now, not her destiny. And whatever came next, she would meet it as the strong, confident, valuable woman she had learned she was. The woman who deserved nothing less than real love, genuine respect, and a partner who would choose her every single day, not just when it was convenient or socially acceptable. The woman she had always been but had finally learned to see. The weeks following Trevor's unwelcome visit brought more than just peace of mind for Amara. Word had somehow spread through Boston's social circles that Trevor Hamilton was trying to win back his former fiancée, and suddenly Amara found herself receiving attention from people who had previously ignored her existence. It started with a phone call on a Friday afternoon. Amara was working late, preparing presentations for the new Cambridge townhouse project, when her office phone rang. Amara Johnson, Morrison Development. Amara darling. It's Caroline Hamilton, Trevor's sister. I hope you remember me. Amara did remember Caroline, though they had never been close. During her relationship with Trevor, Caroline had always been polite but distant, the kind of politeness that rich people used when they didn't want to be outright rude but also didn't want to be friends. Hi Caroline. How are you? I'm wonderful and I hear you are too. Trevor told me about your fabulous new job. I'm so impressed that you're working with Richard Morrison. He's one of Boston's most eligible bachelors, you know. The tone was chatty and friendly, but Amara could hear the fishing expedition underneath. I'm enjoying the work very much. I'm sure you are. Listen, darling, I'm hosting a charity luncheon next week for the Children's Hospital. It's going to be quite the event. All the best people will be there. I'd love for you to attend. As my guest, of course. 6 weeks ago, an invitation to a high society charity event would have thrilled Amara. It would have felt like acceptance, like proof that she belonged in Trevor's world. Now it just felt transparent. That's very kind of you, Caroline, but I'm quite busy with work. Oh, but surely you can take one afternoon off. And it would be such a good networking opportunity for you. Morrison Development Company donates to lots of charities. I'm sure Richard would approve. I'll think about it and get back to you. After hanging up, Amara leaned back in her chair and shook her head. Caroline Hamilton had never shown the slightest interest in her friendship before, but now that Amara was working for a successful company and had rejected Trevor's attempt at reconciliation, suddenly she was worth cultivating. The pattern continued over the next few days. Women who had barely acknowledged her existence when she was with Trevor were suddenly calling to invite her to lunch, to shopping trips, to various social events. Men who had looked right through her at Trevor's parties were asking mutual acquaintances for her phone number. It's amazing, Rachel observed over dinner on Saturday night. They were eating takeout Chinese food in Amara's new apartment. Another milestone in her rebuilt life. After 6 weeks of sleeping on Rachel's couch, she had finally saved enough for a security deposit on a cozy one-bedroom in Cambridge. Suddenly you're the most popular girl in Boston. It's not about me, Amara said, serving herself more lo mein. It's about my job, my association with Richard Morrison, the fact that I rejected Trevor Hamilton. I'm a novelty. Does it bother you? Not really. I just see it for what it is now. 6 weeks ago, this kind of attention would have made me feel validated, like I was finally good enough for their crowd. Now I realize their approval was never worth having in the first place. Her phone buzzed with a text message from a number she didn't recognize. Hi Amara, this is Brad Whitmore. We met at Trevor's Christmas party last year. I heard you're single now and wondered if you'd like to have dinner sometime. I think we'd have a lot to talk about. Amara showed the message to Rachel, who raised an eyebrow. Brad Whitmore? Isn't he the one who spent that whole Christmas party talking about his yacht? And his Harvard MBA and his family's real estate empire, and his collection of expensive watches. Amara deleted the message without responding. He didn't even remember my name when I was dating Trevor. So what are you going to do about all this newfound popularity? Nothing. I'm not interested in being anyone's trophy or novelty. I'm building a life based on what I want, not what other people think I should want. Monday morning brought a surprise visitor to her office. Jennifer buzzed the intercom with barely concealed amusement in her voice. Mrs. Hamilton is here to see you. Trevor's mother. Amara's stomach clenched. Patricia Hamilton was the epitome of Boston old money, impeccably dressed, perfectly coiffed, and utterly convinced of her own superiority. She had made it clear during Amara's relationship with Trevor that she considered her son's choice of girlfriend to be temporary and unfortunate. Send her in. Patricia Hamilton entered Amara's office like she was bestowing a great honor with her presence. She was wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than Amara's monthly rent, and her silver hair was styled in the kind of elegant updo that required weekly salon appointments. Amara, how lovely you look. This office is quite impressive. Thank you, Mrs. Hamilton. Please have a seat. What can I do for you? Patricia settled herself carefully in the chair across from Amara's desk, her posture perfect, her expression carefully composed. I wanted to speak with you about Trevor. I'm afraid there's nothing to discuss. I've made my position clear. Yes, well, I understand you were hurt by what happened at the wedding. Any woman would be. But surely you can understand that Trevor was under a great deal of pressure. Planning a wedding is stressful, especially when one is trying to merge two very different backgrounds. The diplomatic language didn't hide the insult. Amara kept her expression neutral. Is there something specific you wanted to say, Mrs. Hamilton? I want to apologize. For my part in what happened, for not welcoming you more warmly into our family. I realize now that I may have contributed to Trevor's momentary lapse in judgment. Momentary lapse in judgment. As if publicly humiliating her had been like spilling wine on a tablecloth. I appreciate the apology, Amara said carefully. Good. I'm so glad you're being reasonable about this. Patricia leaned forward slightly. The thing is, dear, Trevor is absolutely miserable without you. He's made some foolish decisions lately, dating inappropriate women, making a spectacle of himself at social events. The poor boy clearly doesn't know how to live without you. That's not my responsibility anymore. But it could be. You see, I've come to realize that you're exactly what Trevor needs. You're stable, grounded, sensible. You could be a very positive influence on him. Patricia's smile was practiced and cold. And of course, your new position with Morrison Development shows that you're quite capable of moving in our social circles. There it was. The real reason for this visit. Not love, not genuine regret, but social calculation. Amara was now acceptable because she had the right job, the right connections. Mrs. Hamilton, I'm going to be very direct with you. I'm not interested in getting back together with Trevor. Not now, not ever. Patricia's composure slipped for just a moment. But surely you're not serious about that. Every woman wants to be married, to have a family, security. I want to be married to someone who loves me enough to choose me even when it's difficult. Someone who values me for who I am, not for what job I have or what social circles I can access. Amara stood up from her desk. Trevor had his chance to be that person. He chose not to be. You're being very short-sighted, dear. Trevor comes from one of Boston's finest families. He can provide for you in ways that others cannot. I can provide for myself. Patricia stood as well, her facade of friendliness finally cracking completely. Don't be naive, Amara. This job, this life you think you've built, how long do you really think it will last? Richard Morrison is known for his charitable impulses, but eventually the novelty will wear off. When it does, you'll be right back where you started. The words were meant to wound, to plant seeds of doubt and insecurity. But instead of hurt, Amara felt only pity for this woman who couldn't imagine any reason for success beyond charity or novelty. I think our conversation is over, Mrs. Hamilton. I have work to do. You're making a mistake, Amara. A very big mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. After Patricia Hamilton left, Amara sat back down at her desk and took a deep breath. The encounter had been unpleasant but ultimately liberating. Any lingering doubts she might have had about her decision to reject Trevor were now completely gone. Her phone buzzed with a text from Richard. Sophie wants to know if you can come to dinner tonight. We're making homemade pizza. The simple invitation, with no ulterior motives or social calculations, made Amara smile. She typed back, I'd love to. Should I bring anything? Just yourself. Sophie has been talking about pizza toppings all day. Apparently, she has some very strong opinions about pepperoni placement. That evening, as they stood around the kitchen island at the Morrison house, making pizza dough and arguing about toppings, Amara felt a contentment that had nothing to do with social status or external validation. Sophie was wearing a green apron that was too big for her, getting flour in her hair as she kneaded dough with determination. Richard was patiently helping her, his sleeves rolled up, looking more relaxed than she had ever seen him. Amara, tell Daddy that mushrooms don't belong on pizza, Sophie demanded. I think people should put whatever they like on their pizza, Amara said diplomatically. Thank you, Richard said. A reasonable adult perspective. But mushrooms are yucky, Sophie insisted. Then you don't have to eat them. We'll make half without mushrooms just for you. As they ate their homemade pizzas and Sophie chattered about her day at school, Amara reflected on the difference between this dinner and all the formal events she had attended with Trevor. Here there was no pretense, no performance, no anxiety about saying the wrong thing or using the wrong fork. Just genuine warmth and acceptance. Earth to Amara, Richard said, and she realized she had been staring off into space. Sorry? Just thinking. About what? About how different my life is now compared to 2 months ago. Better different or worse different? Sophie asked. Much better different. Later, after Sophie had gone to bed and Richard was driving Amara home, he asked about her earlier visitor. Jennifer mentioned that Trevor's mother came by the office today. How did that go? About as well as you'd expect. She wants me to give Trevor another chance. She thinks I'm being short-sighted to reject such a wonderful opportunity. And what do you think? I think I'm finally learning to trust my own judgment instead of letting other people tell me what I should want. Richard pulled up in front of her apartment building but didn't immediately unlock the doors. For what it's worth, I think you're making exactly the right choices. Thank you. That means a lot, especially coming from someone whose judgment I respect. There was a moment of loaded silence, full of words neither of them was quite ready to say. Then Richard reached over and unlocked the doors. Sweet dreams, Amara. I'll see you in the morning. As she walked up to her apartment, Amara realized that she was completely at peace with her decisions. Trevor and his family could offer her marriage, money, social status. But they couldn't offer her what she had found with Richard and Sophie. Genuine love, respect, and the freedom to be exactly who she was. She was standing firm in her new life and it felt exactly right. November had arrived in Boston with a vengeance, bringing cold rain and the kind of gray skies that made everyone want to stay inside with hot coffee and warm blankets. Amara was working late in her office, finalizing contracts for 3 of the Cambridge townhouses, when Richard appeared in her doorway with 2 cups of coffee and a serious expression. Got a minute? He asked, stepping into her office and closing the door behind him. Of course. Though if this is about the Peterson contract, I already fixed the issue with the homeowner's insurance requirements. It's not about work. Richard handed her one of the coffees and sat down across from her desk. I had lunch today with someone you know. Caroline Hamilton. Amara looked up in surprise. Caroline Hamilton wanted to have lunch with you? She called my office yesterday and said she had some information I needed to hear about Trevor's behavior at your wedding. She was very mysterious about it, but insistent that it was important. What kind of information? Richard's jaw tightened with suppressed anger. The kind that makes me want to drive over to Trevor Hamilton's house and have a very unpleasant conversation with him. Richard, what are you talking about? Caroline told me the real reason Trevor backed out of marrying you. It wasn't cold feet, it wasn't pressure from his family, and it wasn't because he thought you were too different. Richard leaned forward in his chair. 3 days before your wedding, Trevor's father made him an ultimatum. Either break up with you or be cut off from the family business and his inheritance. The words hit Amara like a physical blow. She set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. What? According to Caroline, her father has been planning to run for mayor next year. He was worried that having a black daughter-in-law would hurt his political prospects with certain voters. So he told Trevor to choose, you or his future. Amara felt sick. All this time, she had believed that Trevor had rejected her because he didn't love her enough, because she wasn't good enough for him. But the truth was somehow worse. He had loved her, or claimed to, but he had chosen money and social status over her anyway. Caroline just told you this? Why now? She said she's been feeling guilty about it ever since. She never agreed with what her father did, but she didn't speak up at the time because she was afraid of causing problems with the family business. Richard's voice was tight with controlled fury. She finally decided to tell the truth because she's tired of watching Trevor mope around and make everyone miserable. So Trevor was lying when he said he was scared and confused. He knew exactly why he was ending things. He knew, and he chose the coward's way out. Instead of telling you the truth, instead of standing up to his father, he made it seem like it was about your worthiness as a person. Amara stood up from her desk and walked to the window, looking out at the gray November evening. The revelation changed everything and nothing at the same time. It explained Trevor's behavior but didn't make it any less hurtful. If anything, it made it worse. I don't know how to feel about this, she said quietly. You have every right to be furious. What Trevor and his father did was calculated and cruel. I am furious, but I'm also relieved in a strange way. At least now I know it wasn't about me not being good enough. It was about them being terrible people. Richard joined her at the window. Caroline also told me something else. She said Trevor's been trying to convince people that you only got this job because you're my companion. That I hired you for personal reasons rather than professional ones. The words made Amara's blood run cold. He's trying to undermine my reputation. It gets worse. He's been telling people at various social events that you're gold digging, that you went from him to me because I have more money. He's making it sound like you're calculating and opportunistic. Of all the... Amara felt rage building in her chest, hot and fierce. How dare he? How dare he try to destroy what I've built here? Caroline thought you should know what he's saying so you can defend yourself. She also said she'd be willing to set the record straight with anyone who asks. Amara turned away from the window to face Richard. Do you think people believe him? Do you think our clients, our colleagues? I think anyone who knows you and sees your work knows better. But Trevor moves in influential circles. His lies could potentially cause problems. The unfairness of it made Amara want to scream. She had been nothing but professional in her role at Morrison Development. She had earned every promotion, every bonus, every bit of success through hard work and competence. But now Trevor was trying to paint her as a manipulative opportunist who slept her way to success. What should I do? We could have our lawyers send him a cease and desist letter. Make it clear that if he continues spreading lies about you, there will be legal consequences. Would that work? It might. Or it might just make him more careful about how he spreads his poison. Richard moved closer to her, his expression fierce and protective. Amara, I want you to know that I will do everything in my power to protect your reputation. Trevor Hamilton is not going to destroy what you've built. The intensity in his voice, the way he was looking at her, made Amara's heart skip a beat. What? Why are you willing to fight for me like this? Richard was quiet for a long moment, looking at her with an expression she had never seen before. When he spoke, his voice was soft but certain. Because I'm in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, changing everything in an instant. Amara felt her breath catch in her throat. Richard. I know this complicates things. I know you work for me, I know the timing isn't ideal, I know there are a dozen reasons why this is complicated. He stepped closer to her. But I can't pretend anymore that my feelings for you are purely professional or even just friendly. How long have you felt this way? Honestly? Since the day I met you in the park. Sophie saw it before I did. She kept asking when you were going to be her new mommy. Despite everything, Amara found herself smiling at that. She did not. She did. Maria had to have a talk with her about not putting pressure on Daddy's friendships. Richard reached out and gently touched her face. The question is, how do you feel about me? Amara looked into his eyes, those kind, intelligent eyes that had seen her worth when she couldn't see it herself. This man who had given her not just a job but a chance to rebuild her entire life. Who had welcomed her into his family, supported her dreams, believed in her potential. I love you too, she said quietly. I've been trying not to admit it to myself because I didn't want to complicate our working relationship, but I love you, Richard. He smiled then, a smile that transformed his entire face. Really? Really? You and Sophie, you've both become so important to me. More important than I should probably admit. Richard cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, soft and gentle and full of promise. It was nothing like kissing Trevor, who had always been demanding, possessive. This kiss felt like coming home. When they broke apart, Richard rested his forehead against hers. So what do we do now? Now we deal with Trevor together. And then we figure out what this means for us, for work, for Sophie. Are you worried about what people will say? About Trevor's accusations seeming to have some truth to them? Amara considered this. Let them talk. I know the truth about why you hired me, and so do you. Anyone else who matters will see the quality of my work and judge me on that. And if Trevor escalates his campaign against you, then we'll deal with that too. Together. She looked at him steadily. I'm not running away from this, Richard. Not from Trevor's lies and not from my feelings for you. I'm done letting other people decide what I deserve or don't deserve. Richard kissed her again, longer this time, and Amara felt something settle into place in her heart. This was right. This was real. This was the love she had been looking for without knowing it. When they finally left the office that evening, walking out into the cold November night hand in hand, Amara felt like she was stepping into a new chapter of her life. The truth about Trevor had been painful to learn, but it had also been liberating. She finally understood that his rejection had never been about her worth as a person. It had been about his weakness as a man. Now she was with someone who chose her every day, who saw her value even when she struggled to see it herself. Someone who was willing to fight for her, defend her, stand by her no matter what challenges they might face. The future was uncertain, full of complications and difficulties they would have to navigate together. But for the first time in her life, Amara was completely confident in the love she was choosing and the man she was choosing to love. 6 months later, on a perfect May afternoon, Amara stood in the gardens behind the Morrison house, surrounded by white roses and the people who had become her chosen family. She was wearing a simple but elegant cream-colored dress. She had sworn off white after the Trevor disaster, and her hair was adorned with tiny flowers that Sophie had insisted on placing just so. You look like a fairy princess, Sophie whispered as she adjusted Amara's bouquet of pink and white peonies. Sophie was wearing a maroon dress with a white sash, her blonde curls bouncing with excitement as she fulfilled her duties as maid of honor. Thank you, sweetheart. Are you ready? I've been ready forever, Sophie announced. Daddy's been ready too, but he's trying to act all calm and grown up about it. The small ceremony was exactly what Amara had wanted. Intimate, genuine, focused on love rather than spectacle. About 30 people were seated on white chairs arranged in neat rows facing a simple archway covered in climbing roses. Rachel was there, of course, beaming with pride and dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Amara's parents sat in the front row, her mother already crying happy tears. Maria was there too, having declared herself the proud grandmother of the bride. Jennifer from the office was there, along with Tom Bradley and several other colleagues who had become genuine friends over the past 8 months. Even Caroline Hamilton had come, having become an unlikely ally after her revelation about Trevor's family had helped expose the truth about the failed wedding. But the person Amara was most eager to see was waiting at the altar. Richard Morrison, looking handsome and nervous in a navy blue suit with a pink tie that matched Sophie's flowers. When their eyes met, he smiled and she felt her heart soar with pure joy. The string quartet began playing Pachelbel's Canon, and Sophie began her slow walk down the aisle, scattering rose petals with the seriousness of someone performing a very important job. When she reached the altar, she took her place beside Richard and gave him a thumbs up that made everyone chuckle. Then it was Amara's turn. Her father appeared at her side, offering his arm with tears in his eyes. You sure about this one, baby girl? he whispered as they prepared to walk down the aisle. More sure than I've ever been about anything, Amara replied. The walk down the aisle felt both endless and instantaneous. Every step took her closer to the man who had seen her worth when she couldn't see it herself, who had given her not just love but the chance to discover her own strength. When she reached the altar, her father kissed her cheek and placed her hand in Richard's. "Take care of my daughter," Robert Johnson said quietly. "With my life," Richard replied, his voice thick with emotion. The ceremony was officiated by Judge Margaret Walsh, an old family friend of Richard's who had known him since childhood. She began with words that made Amara's heart sing. "We are gathered here today not just to witness a wedding, but to celebrate a love story that proves sometimes the most beautiful relationships come from the most unexpected beginnings. Richard and Amara, your journey to this moment has been marked by challenges, growth, and the kind of deep friendship that forms the foundation of lasting love." Judge Walsh spoke about second chances, about finding love when you're not looking for it, about the courage it takes to open your heart again after it's been broken. Her words were personal and meaningful, clearly crafted specifically for this couple and their unique story. When it came time for the vows, Richard went first. He had written his own and he spoke them without notes, looking directly into Amara's eyes. "Amara, when I met you in the park that day, I thought I was just helping a stranger who looked sad. I had no idea I was meeting the woman who would change my life completely. You came into our lives at a time when Sophie and I had gotten comfortable with just the two of us, and you showed us what we were missing." He paused, his voice catching slightly with emotion. "You've taught me that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who makes you want to be better every single day. You've shown Sophie what it means to have a mother's love, and you've shown me what it means to have a true partner. I promise to support your dreams, to celebrate your successes, to stand by you through whatever challenges come our way, and to choose you every single day for the rest of my life." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden as he finished. Amara had to take a moment to compose herself before she could speak her own vows. "Richard, 8 months ago I thought my life was over. I thought I wasn't good enough, wasn't worthy of real love, wasn't capable of building something meaningful on my own. Then you and Sophie found me on the worst day of my life and showed me what unconditional kindness looks like." She looked over at Sophie, who was beaming with pride. "You didn't just give me a job, you gave me a chance to discover who I really am when I'm not trying to be what someone else wants me to be. You've loved me at my weakest and celebrated me at my strongest. Sophie, you taught me that families aren't just born, they're chosen and built with love." Turning back to Richard, she continued, "I promise to love both of you with my whole heart, to be the partner and mother you deserve, and to never forget that the best things in life are worth waiting for. Richard Morrison, you are my answered prayer, my second chance, and my forever love." Judge Walsh asked for the rings, which Sophie proudly produced from a small silk pillow she had been guarding carefully. The rings were simple but elegant, matching platinum bands that Richard and Amara had chosen together. "With this ring I thee wed," Richard said as he slipped the band onto Amara's finger. "With this ring I thee wed," Amara replied, her hands trembling slightly as she placed Richard's ring on his finger. "By the power vested in me by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I now pronounce you husband and wife," Judge Walsh announced with a broad smile. "Richard, you may kiss your bride." The kiss was soft and sweet and full of promise, witnessed by everyone who mattered to them. Sophie immediately began cheering and clapping, which prompted everyone else to do the same. Rose petals filled the air as the guests celebrated the union they had all watched develop from friendship into something beautiful. The reception was held right there in the garden, with tables arranged under twinkling lights strung between the trees. Maria had outdone herself with the catering, creating a menu of all of Amara's favorite foods. The wedding cake was a simple but elegant three-tier creation covered in fresh flowers that matched Amara's bouquet. During dinner, several people gave toasts that brought both laughter and tears. Rachel spoke about watching her best friend transform from a heartbroken woman into a confident, radiant bride. Tom Bradley talked about how Amara had become the heart of the Morrison Development Company team. Even Caroline Hamilton stood up to speak. "I want to apologize publicly for my family's treatment of Amara," Caroline said, raising her champagne glass. "We were wrong, we were cruel, and we missed out on knowing an extraordinary woman. Richard, you're a lucky man. Amara, you deserve all the happiness in the world." But the most touching toast came from Sophie, who had insisted on being allowed to speak. "I used to pray every night for God to send me a new mommy," she said in her clear, confident 6-year-old voice. "I wanted someone pretty and nice and smart who would love Daddy and me forever. Then one day Daddy and I found Amara in the park and she was sad. But she was also pretty and nice and smart, and I knew right away that she was the answer to my prayers. Sophie looked directly at Amara with pure love in her eyes. Amara, thank you for being my new mommy. Thank you for reading me stories and helping me with my homework and teaching me how to braid friendship bracelets. I love you so much. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden as Sophie finished her toast. Amara got up from her seat and hugged her new daughter tightly, whispering, I love you too, sweetheart. So much. As the evening continued with dancing and laughter, Amara found herself stepping back mentally to appreciate the scene. A year ago, she had been planning a different wedding with a different man, trying desperately to fit into a world that had never really wanted her. Tonight, she was surrounded by people who loved and accepted her exactly as she was. The DJ played a mix of songs that meant something to the new family. When At Last by Etta James came on, Richard led Amara onto the dance floor for their first dance as husband and wife. How are you feeling, Mrs. Morrison? He whispered as they swayed together under the stars. Perfect. Complete. Home, she replied, resting her head against his shoulder. Any regrets? Only one. I wish I could go back and tell that heartbroken woman in the park that everything was going to be more wonderful than she could ever imagine. Later in the evening, as the party began to wind down and guests started saying their goodbyes, Trevor Hamilton appeared at the edge of the garden. Amara saw him first, standing by the gate that led to the street, looking uncertain and uncomfortable. What does he want? Richard asked, following her gaze. I don't know. But I'm not afraid of him anymore. Amara walked over to where Trevor was standing, Richard close behind her. Trevor looked older than she remembered, tired and somehow diminished. Congratulations, Trevor said awkwardly. You look happy. I'm happy. Very happy. I wanted to apologize. For everything. For what I did at our wedding, for the things I said afterward, for trying to undermine your reputation. His voice was sincere, defeated. Caroline told me she revealed the truth about my father's ultimatum. I should have told you myself. I should have stood up to him. Yes, you should have. But that's in the past now. I know it doesn't matter now, but I want you to know that I did love you. I was just too weak to choose love over money and status. Amara looked at this man who had once been the center of her universe, and felt only pity for him. I hope you find someone who makes you brave enough to choose love, Trevor. Everyone deserves that chance. Trevor nodded and walked away without another word, disappearing into the Boston night. Richard put his arm around Amara's waist. How do you feel? He asked. Like I just closed the last chapter of my old life, she replied. Now I'm ready to start writing the new one. Have you ever wondered if your biggest heartbreak was actually life's way of leading you to your greatest blessing? If this story of second chances and true love touched your heart, please subscribe and tell us in the comments about a time when something that seemed like the end turned out to be just the beginning. Your support helps us share more stories of hope and love. As the last guest departed and Maria finished cleaning up, the new Morrison family found themselves alone in the garden. Sophie had fallen asleep on one of the couches, still wearing her maroon dress and clutching a bouquet of leftover flowers. I should get her to bed, Richard said, gently lifting his daughter. Our daughter, Amara corrected with a smile. Our daughter, Richard agreed, and the words sounded perfect. Later, after Sophie was tucked safely in her bed and the house was quiet, Richard and Amara sat together on the porch swing, still in their wedding clothes, watching the last of the evening light fade over Boston. So what happens now? Amara asked, curled up against her new husband's side. Now we live happily ever after, Richard said simply. We work together, we raise Sophie together, we build a life together. We travel, we laugh, we face whatever challenges come our way as a team. That sounds perfect. Oh, and there's one more thing, Richard said, reaching into his jacket pocket. Sophie helped me pick this out, but we wanted to wait until after the ceremony to give it to you. He handed her a small jewelry box. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a charm in the shape of a puzzle piece. Sophie said you told her that life is like a puzzle, and sometimes pieces don't fit where you think they should, but the right piece is always coming, Richard explained. She wanted you to have a reminder that you found your right fit with us. Tears sprang to Amara's eyes as she lifted the necklace from the box. It's beautiful. Help me put it on. As Richard fastened the necklace around her neck, Amara realized that Sophie had been right about puzzle pieces. Trevor Hamilton had never been the right fit for her life, no matter how hard she had tried to make him fit. But Richard and Sophie, they were her perfect pieces, the ones that completed her picture and made her whole. The stars came out over Boston as they sat together in comfortable silence, planning their future and savoring their present. Somewhere in the city, life was continuing for thousands of other people, but here in this garden, in this moment, Amara Morrison had everything she had ever truly wanted: love that chose her every day, a family built on respect and genuine affection, and the knowledge that she was finally, completely home. The little girl who had called her pretty in the park had been right about everything. Sometimes disappointments really did make room for better things. Sometimes the worst day of your life led directly to the best days you could ever imagine. And sometimes love really did conquer all. As Richard carried her over the threshold of their home, Amara knew that this was not an ending but a beginning. The beginning of a love story that would last the rest of their lives, built on a foundation of mutual respect, genuine friendship, and the kind of deep, abiding love that could weather any storm. She had started this journey as a rejected bride, laughed at and humiliated. She was ending it as a chosen wife, celebrated and cherished by people who saw her true worth. And she had never been happier in her entire life.